Welcome to The Explainer. Today we're cracking the code of a serial entrepreneur who built more than 10 companies, not from some high-rise office, but from a boat floating in the Mediterranean. His whole approach to work, success, and, well, life might just make you rethink your own.
I mean, that sounds completely impossible, right? But for the guy we're talking about today, it's just another Tuesday. So let's dive into the playbook of a founder who juggles a dozen things at once and see what we can steal for ourselves.
So meet Lars Tvede. And no, that's not just a vacation pick. For Tvede, this boat is basically a productivity hack. He's got this idea that getting away from a regular office lets you do a much deeper, more intense kind of creative work. He actually mixes heavy problem solving with things like swimming, skiing, and sailing. So how in the world does he actually do it? Well, the very first principle is all about mastering your momentum. See, when you're juggling this many projects, your biggest enemy isn't a lack of time, it's getting stuck. And Tvede has a whole system to make sure that pretty much never happens.
He calls it the Hemingway Bridge. You know, the famous author. Apparently, when he'd finish a chapter, just before stopping for the day, he'd go ahead and write the first page or two of the next chapter. That little bit of progress creates this mental bridge, which makes it super easy to just pick up the thread the next morning without ever staring at a dreaded blank page.
And here's what that looks like in the real world. Tvede's team will just grind on a really tough problem until they're about to hit a wall, and then they just stop. They'll go for a swim, have dinner, whatever. And the next morning, because they already built that little mental bridge, someone almost always has the breakthrough. It's kind of like letting your subconscious do all the heavy lifting while you get some rest.
Okay, but managing your own creativity, that's only half the battle. A huge part of Tvede's success comes from knowing when to hit the gas and when to be cautious. He basically argues that the economy has a predictable weather pattern, and every good sailor needs to know the forecast.
He breaks it down into 3 key cycles. First, you've got the short inventory cycle, which isn't too scary. Then there's the medium-term capital investment cycle. This one causes a real recession about once a decade. But the one you really have to watch out for is the long, 20-year real estate cycle. For a founder, this isn't just some abstract economics theory, it's your guide for when to hire like crazy versus when to save every penny.
Now here's where it gets really interesting. Sometimes these cycles line up, or mode lock. You tend to get a pretty serious recession every 10 years or so. But when that capital cycle and the big real estate cycle hit bottom at the same time, like they did in 2008, well, that's when you get a massive financial crisis. By understanding this rhythm, Tvede actually anticipates the next big downturn. He's pointing to somewhere around 2030, and he plans his businesses accordingly. This is basically a strategic calendar for when to go looking for money and when to build up your war chest.
So you've got your creative flow down, you understand the flow of the market, what's next? Well, according to Tvede, before you write a single line of code or even think about renting an office, you have to answer 2 really fundamental questions. First, what kind of company are you really building? Are you creating a lifestyle company, something that's designed to be your dream job and give you control? Or are you building a growth company, designed from day one to scale like crazy and attract investors? There's no right or wrong answer here, but you absolutely have to pick a lane. That one decision defines everything that comes after. And second, who's on the ship with you? The data is super clear on this. Solo founders have a much harder time. The dream team is a group with complementary skills. You need the tech genius, the sales whiz, the operations person, but who all share the same core values. And hey, if you're not sure you're even cut out for this world, Tvede's advice is simple. Go work in someone else's startup first. See if you like it.
All right, this brings us to what might be Tvede's most important principle of all. And honestly, it cuts against everything you hear about the move fast and break things philosophy.
He believes in being patient. Instead of raising millions of dollars and hiring a huge team on day one, he says you should start slow, spend almost nothing, and just obsessively tweak the idea and the business model until you know, with total confidence, that it works. Only then you hit the accelerator. And the contrast here is just stark. On one side, you have Tvede's methodical, risk-aware, almost patient approach. And on the other, you have the common startup practice of blitzscaling, just burning through cash to grow at any cost. It's really a choice between strategic patience and brute force speed.
Okay, so you have the principles for your process, for timing and for scaling. But what's the core mindset, the glue that holds all of this together? Well, it really comes down to how you think about innovation itself.
Tvede, kind of like Steve Jobs before him, believes that innovation is rarely about inventing something brand new out of thin air. It's about recombination. It's about seeing the connections between existing ideas or technologies or needs that nobody else has spotted before.
Which, of course, leads to the big question. How do you train yourself to see those hidden connections? How do you actually find the next big idea?
Tvede explains this with a really powerful analogy. He says you can navigate life with either a laser or a radar. A laser, right, is hyper-focused on one single task, but a radar is constantly scanning the entire environment. To find new ideas, you have to operate with a radar. Just stay curious, read all sorts of different things, and talk to lots of people.
And get this, there's actual science to back this up. One researcher found that people who think of themselves as lucky aren't magical. They just have their radar on all the time. They're more open to chance encounters, and they notice opportunities that super-focused, quote-unquote, unlucky people miss completely.
And so that's where we land. Because after all the strategies for creativity, market timing, and scaling, it all boils down to this classic truth. Tvede's blueprint gives you an incredible map. Integrating work with life,
riding the economic waves and nailing it before you scale it. But the journey? That still requires the perspiration. So the only real question left is, are you going to build with a laser or a radar?